You're standing in a concrete bunker on a French beach watching the sunrise. You've been told your position is impregnable. Your commanders have assured you that if the invasion comes, you'll throw them back into the sea within hours. You believe them, you have to believe them. Then you raise your binoculars and your entire world shatters. What would you do if you saw 5,000 ships on the horizon? Not 50, not 500, 5,000. An armada so massive that you literally cannot see where it ends. And every single one of those ships is pointed directly at you. This is the true story of Oberleutnant Hein Severloh, the man who would become known as the Beast of Omaha Beach. A soldier who fought harder than almost any defender on D-Day, who fired until his machine gun melted, who killed more men in 6 hours than most soldiers do in an entire war. And yet by noon, he knew with absolute certainty that everything he did was pointless, because Severloh wasn't fighting soldiers that morning. He was fighting American industry, and no amount of courage, no amount of bullets, no amount of German tactical excellence could defeat that. Let me show you D-Day the way you've never seen it before, through the eyes of the man pulling the trigger, the man who did everything right and still lost, the man who understood in real time that he was witnessing the moment Germany lost World War II, April 1944, 2 months before the invasion. Hein Severloh stands at attention inside Widerstandsnis 62, a fortified bunker overlooking a stretch of beach the Americans will soon call Bloody Omaha. He's 21 years old, a farm boy from Lower Saxony who joined the Wehrmacht because everyone in his village joined. War, for him, has been mostly boredom punctuated by occasional terror. But today is different. Today, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is inspecting the Atlantic Wall defenses. Rommel moves through the bunker like a man possessed, checking firing angles, ammunition stores, interlocking fields of fire. He's gained weight since his days in North Africa, and there's something frantic in his energy. He knows what Severloh doesn't yet understand, that everything depends on the next few months. Rommel stops in front of Severloh's MG-42 machine gun position. The weapon is perfectly maintained, the ammunition belts neatly stacked, the field of fire covering 400 meters of beach with overlapping coverage from neighboring positions. "Good work, Oberleutnant," Rommel says, his voice clipped and precise. "When they come, you'll throw them back into the sea. The first 24 hours will be decisive. After that, it won't matter how many ships they bring. They'll be stuck on the beaches, and we'll destroy them piecemeal." Severloh wants to believe him. Rommel is a legend, after all, the Desert Fox, the man who nearly took Cairo. If anyone understands how to defeat an amphibious invasion, it's him. But there's something in Rommel's eyes that troubles Severloh, a fear the field marshal is trying to hide, as if he's trying to convince himself as much as his soldiers. After Rommel leaves, Severloh sits at his machine gun and does mathematics. His MG-42 can fire 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 bullets every second. He has 12,000 rounds of belted ammunition, enough for 10 minutes of sustained fire if he doesn't overheat the barrel. With proper burst control and barrel changes, he can make that ammunition last for hours. German intelligence briefings say the Allies can assemble maybe 1,500 ships for a cross-channel invasion. Maximum landing force, 100,000 men across a 50-mile front. Simple division means roughly 2,000 men per mile of beach. Severloh's sector is responsible for defending 400 meters, about a quarter mile. So he's looking at maybe 500 American soldiers in his kill zone during the first wave. If each burst of 6 rounds hits one soldier, he can stop them, pin them down, give the panzer divisions time to arrive and drive the survivors back into the ocean. The math works. It has to work. What Severloh doesn't know, what no German soldier on that coast knows, is that every single number in those calculations is catastrophically wrong. June 6, 1944, 5:52 a.m. Severloh is drinking ersatz coffee, the terrible roasted grain mixture that Germany calls coffee now that real beans are impossible to find. His assistant gunner, a teenager named Karl Wegner from Bavaria, is cleaning the MG-42's barrel for the 3rd time this week. It doesn't need cleaning, but when you're waiting for an invasion that might come any day, you clean things. "Think it'll be today?" Wegner asks. He's 18, barely shaving, and he asks this question every morning. Severloh shrugs. "Intelligence says the weather's too rough, high winds, heavy seas. No one launches an invasion in this weather." He's repeating what he was told at yesterday's briefing. The Allied weather window is closing. If they don't invade in the next 48 hours, they'll have to wait another month for the tides to align properly. Wegner nods, satisfied, and goes back to cleaning the already clean gun. Severloh walks to the bunker's observation slit and raises his binoculars, scanning the English Channel out of habit. Dawn mist is lifting slowly from the water. Visibility is poor, maybe 800 meters. He can see patches of gray sea between the fog banks. Then he sees something that makes his hands start to tremble. A ship, then another, then another. The mist clears a bit more, and suddenly the horizon is full of vessels. Destroyers, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable even at this distance. Battleships massive and slow, transport ships riding low in the water. Severloh starts counting. He reaches 50 and doesn't stop. 100, 150, 200. He lowers the binoculars, wipes the lenses, raises them again. The ships are still there, more of them now as the mist continues to lift. 300 ships, no, more than that. The horizon is becoming a solid wall of metal stretching from east to west as far as he can see in both directions. "Wegner," he says quietly, "get the battery commander on the telephone, now." The teenager hears something in Severloh's voice and moves fast. Within seconds, he hands over the field telephone handset. "Herr Major," Severloh says, trying to keep his voice steady and failing. "I'm looking at the channel, sir. There are ships, hundreds of them. I can't see the end of the formation. It extends beyond my observation range in both directions." There's a pause on the line, then Major Pluscat's voice tense. "How many ships, Oberleutnant? Give me a number." Severloh looks through his binoculars again. Every few seconds, another vessel emerges from the dispersing fog. Battleships with gun turrets the size of houses, cruisers bristling with weapons, destroyers cutting through the waves, and behind them hundreds upon hundreds of landing craft, their flat bows pointed directly at his beach. "Sir, I've counted over 300 so far, and I can still see more appearing. The entire northern horizon is covered with ships. I've never seen anything like this. I don't think anyone has ever seen anything like this." He's right, though he doesn't know just how right. What Hein Severloh is witnessing is the largest naval armada ever assembled in human history. Not 1,500 ships, as German intelligence predicted. Not 2,000. 5,000 vessels carrying 160,000 men, more firepower than any nation has ever concentrated in a single operation, all converging on a 50-mile stretch of French coastline. And a significant portion of that armada is heading directly toward Widerstandsonist 62. Severloh lowers his binoculars and looks at Wegner. The boy is staring at him, waiting for reassurance, waiting to be told what to do. "Wake everyone," Severloh says quietly. "Check all ammunition. Make sure every weapon is loaded and ready. This is not a drill." Wegner runs to rouse the other soldiers. Severloh walks back to his observation slit and raises the binoculars one more time. The ships are closer now, close enough that he can see individual details. Close enough that he can count the gun turrets on the battleships. And they just keep coming. Every time he thinks he's seen the last vessel, another row appears behind it. It's like watching a city float toward you across the ocean. An entire city made of steel and explosives, and it's all heading your way. For the first time in his military service, Hein Severloh feels genuine terror. The soldiers of Widerstandsonist 62 gather at their positions. There are 32 men in the bunker complex, machine gunners, riflemen, a mortar team, and anti-aircraft crew. Most of them are in their early 20s. 3 are teenagers. The oldest is 35, a veteran of the Eastern Front who drinks to stop the nightmares. They all turn to Severloh for guidance. He's the officer. He's supposed to know what to do. "Gentlemen," he says, and his voice sounds steadier than he feels. "The invasion is here. The ships you're about to see will be unlike anything you've encountered. But remember your training. Interlocking fields of fire. Aim for the waterline when the landing craft are in the shallows. Short, controlled bursts to prevent overheating. Make every round count." He looks at each man in turn. Wegner, still practically a child. Heinz, the veteran who's seen too much. France, who has a wife and baby daughter in Hamburg. Good men, all of them. Men who have done everything asked of them. "We're going to do our duty today," Severloh continues. "Whatever happens, we fight for each other. Understood?" They nod, murmuring agreement. But he can see it in their eyes, the same fear he's feeling, because they've all seen the horizon by now. They've all done the same mathematical calculations he did. The numbers don't work anymore. 6:15 a.m. The naval bombardment begins. Severloh feels it before he hears it, a deep vibration that travels through the concrete and into his bones. Then the sound arrives, a continuous rolling thunder that makes the bunker walls tremble and dust rain down from the ceiling. Through his binoculars, he watches the horizon light up with muzzle flashes, one battleship firing, then another, then 10, 20, 30 ships firing simultaneously, their big guns aimed at German positions along the coast. The first shells land a kilometer inland, massive explosions that throw dirt and debris hundreds of feet into the air. The bombardment is walking closer, methodically destroying German positions one by one. A shell lands 200 meters to the west. The earth erupts in a fountain of soil and shattered concrete. When the smoke clears, Widerstandsonist 61 is gone. Simply gone. 30 men who were eating breakfast 10 minutes ago have ceased to exist. The anti-aircraft gunner, whose name is Joseph, points skyward with a shaking hand. Mein Gott! Severloh looks up. The sky is full of aircraft. Not a squadron, not a wing. The entire sky from horizon to horizon is filled with bombers and fighters flying in formation toward the French coast. Wave after wave of them, their engines creating a roar so overwhelming that Severloh has to shout to be heard by the man standing next to him. He tries to count the aircraft and gives up at 200. There are too many. They fill his entire field of vision, a river of metal flowing overhead. Joseph's anti-aircraft crew opens fire with their 20 cannon. The tracers arc into the sky, disappearing into the mass of aircraft. They claim 2 hits, 2 planes spiraling down out of thousands. It makes no difference whatsoever. The bombing runs continue without pause. Severloh watches as entire sections of the coastal defenses are systematically erased. Bunkers that took 6 months to build are destroyed in seconds. Artillery positions vanish in massive explosions. Carefully constructed Atlantic Wall, Rommel's masterpiece, is being torn apart like paper, and the ships keep getting closer. 6:25 a.m. Severloh receives a message from division headquarters. This is not a diversion, this is not a feint. This is the main invasion. Enemy forces are landing on 5 beaches simultaneously. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. A front of 50 miles. All units are to hold their positions at all costs. Wegner looks at Severloh. 5 beaches. How many men is that? Severloh does the calculation in his head. If they're landing on 5 beaches simultaneously across 50 miles with this many ships, the numbers are staggering. More than we have bullets, he says quietly. His company commander, Hauptmann Furking, arrives at the bunker, his face pale beneath the dust. He's a good officer, competent and brave, but Severloh can see the shock in his eyes. Intelligence has revised their estimates, Furking says, his voice hollow. They're now saying 150,000 men in the first wave, possibly more. The 352nd Infantry Division has 12,000 men defending this sector. We are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. He doesn't need to state the obvious, that no defensive position, however well prepared, can withstand those odds. When do the panzers counterattack? Severloh asks. Furking shakes his head. They're being held in reserve, Hitler's personal order. He thinks this might still be a diversion, that the real invasion will come at Calais. Until he's convinced otherwise, the armor stays put. Severloh feels something cold settle in his stomach. They're going to face this alone. Through the observation slit, he can see the landing craft now, hundreds of them forming into assault waves heading directly toward his beach. How long do we hold? He asks. Furking meets his eyes. Until we can't anymore, make them pay for every meter of sand. That's all we can do. The Hauptmann leaves to check the other positions. Severloh returns to his MG-42, running his hand along the barrel. The metal is cold now. In a few minutes, it will be hot enough to boil water. Ready, Wegner? The boy nods, though his hands are shaking as he loads the first ammunition belt. Severloh settles into position behind the gun, adjusting the sights, checking the firing angle one last time. Through the weapon's sight, he can see the landing craft clearly now. Maybe 400 meters out and closing fast. He can see the soldiers inside them. Young men probably his age, probably just as terrified as he is. Americans who have been told they're liberating Europe, coming to defeat tyranny. And he's about to kill as many of them as he possibly can. Because that's what soldiers do, that's what he's been trained for, that's his duty. The landing craft reached 300 meters, 200, 150. At 6:30 a.m., the first ramps drop. Severloh opens fire. The MG-42 is called Hitler's buzzsaw by Allied soldiers, and now Severloh understands why. The weapon roars to life with a sound like ripping canvas, impossibly fast, 20 rounds per second hammering out of the barrel. He sweeps left to right across the beach, methodical, controlled bursts, exactly as he was trained. The first American soldiers fall in the shallow water before they can even get off the ramp. Others make it 5 meters, 10 meters before they drop. The beach becomes chaos. Men are running, crawling, diving behind the steel obstacles that were supposed to stop landing craft. Bodies pile up at the waterline. The water turns red, and the landing craft keep coming. Severloh fires, reloads, fires again. Wegner feeds ammunition belts into the gun with practiced efficiency, his young face set in concentration, trying not to think about what they're doing. After 20 minutes, the gun's barrel is glowing cherry red. The cooling water in the jacket is literally boiling, steam hissing from the overflow valve. Severloh's shoulder aches from the recoil. His ears are ringing despite the cotton wadding. And the Americans keep coming. He can see them now, individual faces, men his age with the same fear in their eyes. One soldier, maybe 19 years old, makes it all the way to the seawall before Severloh's burst cuts him down. The American falls face first into the sand, his helmet rolling away. Severloh fires until that image burns into his memory. He'll see that helmet rolling across the sand in his nightmares for the next 60 years. But he doesn't stop firing, because behind that one soldier there are 10 more. Behind them, another landing craft is disgorging 30 men. Behind that, another craft and another and another. The mathematics are becoming clear. For every American Severloh kills, 3 more reach the beach. For every landing craft destroyed by German artillery, 2 more take its place. By 8:00 a.m., Severloh has fired over 8,000 rounds. The beach in front of his position is carpeted with bodies. Burning landing craft litter the shallows. Wounded men cry for medics who can't reach them through the fire. It looks like the defensive plan is working. The Americans are pinned down, unable to advance, huddling behind obstacles and the bodies of their comrades. But Severloh knows better. Because even while he's been firing, even while he's been killing men as fast as he can pull the trigger, he's been counting the landing craft that successfully disgorged their troops. 50 craft, 30 men each. That's 1,500 soldiers landed in his sector alone, and on the horizon he can see another 100 craft forming up for the next wave. "Wagner," he shouts over the gun's roar. "How much ammunition left?" The boy checks the supply. "Maybe 3,000 rounds, Herr Oberleutnant." After that, they have rifles and pistols. Maybe 500 rounds between 32 men against thousands of American soldiers. Severloh calls the battery commander on the field telephone. "Requesting ammunition resupply, I'm running critically low." The response is crackling and distant. "No resupply available. All reserve ammunition is being held for the counterattack." "What counterattack?" Severloh shouts into the phone. "The panzers haven't moved." "I have my orders, Oberleutnant. Make what you have last." The line goes dead. Severloh looks at Wagner. The boy's face is pale, covered in concrete dust and gun smoke. He's been loading ammunition belts for 2 hours straight, and he understands what no resupply means. "We keep fighting," Severloh says. "Controlled bursts make every round count." But even as he says it, he knows the truth. He's going to run out of ammunition. And when he does, 5,000 American soldiers will still be on the beach, with 10,000 more behind them and 50,000 more after that. He returns to the MG-42 and continues firing. 9:30 a.m., something changes. Severloh is tracking another landing craft through his sights when he hears a new sound, deeper than the landing craft engines, heavier. Through the smoke and confusion, he sees them, LSD's landing ship tank. Massive vessels with flat bottoms and enormous bow doors driving straight up onto the beach. The first one grounds itself in the shallows. The bow doors swing open like the jaws of some mechanical monster, and a Sherman tank rolls directly onto the sand. Then another tank, then another. Severloh watches in disbelief as an entire armored column drives off the ship and onto Omaha Beach. The tanks immediately begin engaging German positions with their 75 guns. Concrete bunkers that shrugged off small arms fire disintegrate under tank rounds. "We need anti-tank weapons," someone shouts from deeper in the bunker. But Widerstandsonist 62 doesn't have anti-tank weapons. They were told to expect infantry, just infantry, maybe a few engineers with Bangalore torpedoes. Nobody said anything about armor landing in the first wave. Severloh counts the tanks. 10, 20. 30 Sherman tanks on his section of beach alone, and more LSDs are approaching the shore. He swings the MG-42 toward the nearest tank and opens fire. The bullets spark harmlessly off the armor. The tank's turret rotates toward his position with terrifying deliberation. "Down!" Severloh screams. The 75 round hits the bunker's facade, and the world explodes in concrete dust and shrapnel. When Severloh can see again, Wagner is on the ground, blood streaming from his forehead. "I'm okay," the boy gasps. Just scratched." But he's not okay. None of them are okay, because the Americans have landed armor and every calculation, every defensive plan has just become meaningless. Severloh helps Wagner to his feet and returns to the gun. He has maybe 1,000 rounds of ammunition left. He keeps firing at infantry targets, sweeping the beach, trying not to think about the tanks. By 10:00 a.m., his assistant gunner counts 40 Sherman tanks on the beach. Behind them, engineers are laying metal roadways across the sand. Trucks and jeeps are driving off landing craft in a steady stream. The Americans aren't just landing troops anymore. They're landing infrastructure. They're building a city on the beach while German soldiers are still fighting. And then Severloh's gun jams. It's not a simple jam like a spent casing caught in the mechanism. The bolt has fused partially shut from the heat. The barrel is warped. The receiver has a hairline crack running through it. Severloh has fired approximately 12,000 rounds in 3.5 hours. The gun has literally melted. Wegner helps him try to clear the jam, their hands blistering on the superheated metal. But it's no use. The weapon is done. Severloh looks down at his hands. They're black with gun oil and carbon residue. There's someone else's blood on his sleeve. He doesn't know whose. He picks up his Karabiner 98K rifle, 5 rounds in the internal magazine. He has maybe 50 rounds of rifle ammunition in his pouches. 50 rounds. Through the bunker's firing slit, he can see the beach. It's completely transformed from this morning. Where there were empty sands, there are now thousands of vehicles parked in neat rows. Engineers are directing traffic at improvised intersections. Medical tents have been erected. Military police are managing logistics. And the ships keep unloading. Even now, after 4 hours of continuous combat, the armada on the horizon looks no smaller than it did at dawn. One of the riflemen, France, the one with the baby daughter, appears at Severloh's side. "Herr Oberleutnant, what do we do?" Severloh looks at him. France is 23 years old, a carpenter from Hamburg, a good man who joined up because he had no choice. He deserves an answer. They all deserve an answer. "We keep fighting," Severloh says. But his voice sounds hollow even to himself. Because what's the point? He's killed how many dozens, hundreds, and 30,000 more Americans landed while he was pulling the trigger. He destroyed landing craft for 3 hours, and the Americans built a harbor while he was shooting. This isn't warfare. This is something else entirely. This is industry. 12:00 p.m. Hauptmann Furking returns to the bunker, his uniform torn and blackened from explosions. "We're pulling back," he says without preamble. "The forward positions are overrun. The Americans have breached the seawall in multiple locations. They're moving inland." "What about the counterattack?" someone asks. Furking laughs, and it's the most terrible sound Severloh has ever heard. "There is no counterattack. The panzers are still waiting for orders that will never come. We're on our own." He looks at Severloh. "How many men have you lost?" Severloh does a quick count. Of the 32 men who started the morning in Widerstandsson as 62, 11 are dead, 7 are wounded too badly to move, and 3 are missing, probably buried in collapsed sections of the bunker. 11 effectives remaining, Herr Hauptmann. Furking nods slowly. "Gather anyone who can walk. We withdraw to the secondary defensive line 3 kilometers inland. Move quickly. The Americans have tanks in the streets." Tanks in the streets. On D-Day, 4 hours after the landing began. Severloh collects the survivors. Wegner, his head bandaged but ambulatory. France, limping from shrapnel in his leg. Heinz, the veteran, carrying 2 wounded men's rifles because his hands need something to do. 8 others, all of them moving like old men, though none are older than 30. They navigate through the communication trenches, moving inland, away from the beach. Behind them, American soldiers are already occupying Widerstandsson as 62, setting up their own machine guns in the positions the Germans held all morning. As they climb the bluff overlooking Omaha Beach, Severloh makes the mistake of looking back. What he sees breaks something inside him. The beach he defended for 6 hours is now completely American. Thousands upon thousands of vehicles are parked in organized rows. Supply depots have been established. Roads have been built across the dunes. Field hospitals are treating casualties under canvas tents, and the ships keep coming. Even now, after 12 hours of combat, after losing 2,000 men on this beach alone, the Americans show no signs of stopping. More landing craft are hitting the shore. More tanks are rolling off LSDs. More soldiers are marching up the bluffs. It's as if everything the German defenders did this morning simply didn't matter. Severloh fought harder than almost any soldier on D-Day. He fired 12,000 rounds. He killed, the estimates vary, but probably between 1,000 and 2,000 American soldiers. He did everything a German officer was supposed to do, and while he was doing it, 80,000 more Americans landed on his beach. "Herr Oberleutnant," Wegner's voice pulls him back. "We need to keep moving." Severloh tears his gaze away from the beach and continues climbing. June 6, 1944, 4:00 p.m. Severloh and the remnants of his company reach a small village 3 kilometers inland. It's already being shelled by American naval guns, the same ships that were on the horizon this morning now casually destroying targets miles from the coast. They take shelter in a barn. The men collapse against the walls, exhausted, some sleeping despite the artillery fire. France sits next to Severloh, staring at nothing. "How many do you think you got?" "Does it matter?" Severloh replies. "I need it to matter," France says quietly. "I need to know that what we did today meant something." Severloh looks at the young man. He wants to lie, wants to say that, yes, they fought well, yes, they made a difference, yes, their sacrifice mattered. But he can't, not anymore. "I fired 12,000 rounds this morning," Severloh says. "I hit many men, I don't know how many, hundreds certainly, maybe 1,000, and while I was firing, 30,000 more landed on that beach. I destroyed landing craft for 6 hours, France, and the Americans built a functioning harbor while I was shooting. He turns to look at the younger man. We're not fighting soldiers. We're fighting factories. American factories that can build 5,000 ships while we're building 500. Factories that can replace every loss we inflict within hours. Factories that can land more men, more tanks, more supplies than we can destroy even if we fight perfectly. France is quiet for a long moment. Then, so we've already lost. We lost the moment those ships appeared on the horizon, Severloh says. We just didn't know it yet. The weeks blur together after D-Day. Severloh and what's left of his unit fight a retreat across France. They dig in, get overrun, fall back, dig in again. The pattern repeats endlessly. Every position they defend, the Americans take. Every time they inflict casualties, the Americans replace them overnight. Every time they destroy equipment, 3 times as much appears the next day. It's not combat anymore. It's industrial processing. The American war machine is grinding through German defenses like meat through a grinder, methodical and unstoppable. By September 1944, Severloh is captured by American soldiers near the German border. He's wounded, exhausted, and out of ammunition. He surrenders without resistance. The American lieutenant who takes his surrender is probably 25 years old, clean-shaven, well-fed, wearing a uniform that looks brand new. "You guys fought hard," the lieutenant says in accented German. "But it's over now." Severloh just nods. It was over 4 months ago. He's known that since the morning he saw 5,000 ships. Decades later, long after the war, Hein Severloh is working on his family's farm in Lower Saxony. The nightmares never really stopped. The rolling helmet, the faces in the landing craft, the sound of the MG-42 that he still hears sometimes when it's very quiet. A letter arrives from America. It's from a D-Day veteran named David Silva, who was in the first wave at Omaha Beach. Silva has been researching the battle, trying to understand what happened that morning. He's traced casualties to specific German positions and wants to correspond with the defenders. Severloh almost throws the letter away, but something makes him write back. They begin a correspondence that lasts years. Silva sends photos of Omaha Beach as it looks now, peaceful, with a memorial to the fallen. Severloh sends his own memories, trying to explain what he saw that morning. Eventually, Silva asks the question Severloh has been dreading. "How many men do you think you killed that day?" Severloh sits at his kitchen table for hours before answering. Finally, he writes, "I don't know. I fired 12,000 rounds. I was well trained and my position had excellent fields of fire. Casualty estimates based on my position suggest perhaps 1,000 to 2,000 men. But I will tell you what I learned that day. The number doesn't matter. For every man I hit, 3 more landed. For every landing craft I helped destroy, 2 more took its place. I fought as hard as any soldier could fight, and it made no difference at all, because I wasn't fighting soldiers. I was fighting American industry, and no soldier, no matter how skilled or brave, can defeat that." In 2000, Severloh travels to Normandy for the first time since the war. He meets David Silva in person, shaking the hand of a man who might have been in his sights that morning. They stand together on Omaha Beach, 2 old men looking at the peaceful water. "I had nightmares about you," Silva says quietly. "The German machine gunner who wouldn't stop firing. We called you the Beast of Omaha." "I had nightmares about you too," Severloh replies. "All of you, the faces I saw through my sights, the men I killed. I did my duty as a German soldier, and I will carry those deaths until I die." They're quiet for a long time, watching the waves. "Do you know what I think about now?" Severloh finally says. "I think about the mathematics. German intelligence said you could land 100,000 men. You landed 160,000 on the first day and 2 million within weeks. They said you had 1,500 ships. You had 5,000. They told us we could stop you, but we never had a chance." He turns to Silva. "That's what I learned on June 6th. That modern war isn't won by courage or tactics. It's won by factories and shipyards and industrial capacity. You didn't defeat us with better soldiers. You defeated us with more of everything. More ships, more planes, more tanks, more bullets. So many more that our bravery became irrelevant." Silva nods slowly. "I was terrified that morning. We all were. We thought we'd die on that beach. Many of us did. And you kept coming anyway," Severloh says. "That's what I couldn't understand at the time. I was killing men and you kept coming. Landing craft were burning and more kept arriving. It seemed insane. But now I understand you knew what I didn't, that you had already won. That you had so many ships, so many men, so much industrial power behind you that nothing we did could stop you. You knew you would take that beach even if it cost 10,000 lives, because you had 2 million more coming behind them." They stand in silence as the sun sets over Omaha Beach. 2 men who survived the meat grinder of industrial warfare, trying to make sense of what they lived through. Hein Severloh died in 2006 at the age of 79. He never stopped wrestling with what he did on D-Day, never stopped seeing the faces of the men he killed. He gave interviews, wrote a memoir, tried to explain to a new generation what that morning was like.